No boundaries. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Many people who are victims of narcissists often talk about how they need to be better at enforcing boundaries, sticking to boundaries, laying down boundaries. I regularly explain to people, forget it. When it comes to doing that with a narcissist, it's pointless. We don't recognize them. We trample all over them, burst through them, ignore them. Instead, what you'd be far better doing is working on your own control and boundaries in relation to yourself rather than trying to impose them on a narcissist. Narcissists don't recognize boundaries for two fundamental reasons. First, we have a rampant sense of entitlement whereby we are allowed to do what we want, when we want, how we choose, and with whomsoever we select. Secondly, to recognize a boundary would be to pass control, submit to control, and thus fly in the face of one of the prime aims. Accordingly, it is hugely important for the narcissist not to recognize boundaries in order to ensure that control is obtained. This lack of boundary recognition manifests in many different ways in relation to the behavior of a narcissist. It might be, for example, and this is a common example, repeatedly sending you messages, telephoning you over and over again. It could be flirtatious behaviors. It might be being overly tactile with people, invading their personal space. It could be asking prying questions, engaging in inappropriate communications. It might be introducing somebody to your family or children at a very early stage. Stealing, appropriating the assets of others, taking things that belong to other people, taking food off somebody's plate without asking, talking over people, interrupting people, being a self-inviter, just calling around at a whim. All of those are examples, and there are plenty more, of the failure to recognize boundaries. Now, before some of you start getting worried and thinking, oh my goodness, I do some of those, it's the case that everybody can engage in poor boundary recognition. Some people are much better at recognizing boundaries than others. They respect them. For example, they only call round when invited. They don't walk into someone's house without knocking on the door first. They ask to borrow things and return them promptly. Even if you recognize instances there which accord with your own behavior, which would suggest that your boundary recognition isn't as good as it ought to be, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are a narcissist. They're merely indicators, and it needs to go with a lot more information, as you know from my work, before a finding of narcissism can be made. Boundaries matter to people, but they don't matter to narcissists. We, of course, enforce boundaries as against everybody else, demonstrating our hypocrisy, but we don't recognize them in relation to the way that we conduct ourselves. And, as reported in The Mirror by Ryan Fahey, we have an interesting example of a potential narcissist at work who has failed to recognise boundaries. Mum marries stepson she raised since the age of 7, and now they have 2 children. Ooh, what clusterfuck of interfamilial shenanigans is this? Russian weight loss influencer Marina Balmasheva, age 37, married Vladimir Shavirin, now 23, after first being married to his dad, Alexei Shavirin, 47, who claims the couple were not shy about sleeping together while he was in the house. A woman who cheated on her husband, infidelity, lack of emotional empathy, and married his son, lack of emotional empathy, lack of boundary recognition, are living a happy life with their children. Russian weight loss influencer Marina Balmasheva, 37, has 2 children with Vladimir Shavirin, now 23, after first being married to his father, Alexei Shavirin. The 47-year-old jilted partner has now been left to care for the 5 kids they adopted together. That shows an absence of accountability, an absence of emotional empathy, a parental abrogation of responsibilities and duties by the mother. Marina, who brought up Vladimir from the age of 7, regularly posts about their life together on her social media account. Lack of boundary recognition lack of privacy, utilisation of social media, while her former husband has dished some dirt in conversations with journalists over the years. In one interview, he explained how his ex-wife seduced my son, whose first ever relationship was with his stepmother and now wife. But the way she allegedly behaved while they were all living under the same roof was the most shocking element of their love story. Alexei alleged that the pair would sneak around behind him, having sex while he was in the house, commission of infidelity, lack of boundary recognition, absence of emotional empathy, and then going back to their normal familial roles as if nothing had happened, compartmentalization. He said, "They were not shy to have sex while I was at home. I would have forgiven her cheating if it wasn't my son. She was running to my son's bed from our bedroom when I was sleeping. After that, she was coming back and lying in bed with me as if nothing had happened." Now, pausing there. Already there are a number of indicators that suggest that Marina may well be a narcissist. Might it be that the son is also, as he's not exhibiting any emotional empathy for his father by slipping a crippler to his father's wife, and he's doing so repeatedly and behind the back of his father? Well, it's a possibility, but it's probably more likely that he is being governed by a reduction in his emotional empathy as a consequence of the fact that along comes an older woman, invariably the product of many teenage fantasy, and initiates a sexual relationship with him. Furthermore, even if he were an empathic individual, it could well be that his addiction to the narcissist means that he takes leave of his senses, that his emotional empathy for his father disappears out of the window and he becomes entranced and infatuated with this woman. Alternatively, we have two narcissists that have come together. But it certainly seems to be the case that her behaviour in initiating the relationship, in cheating on her husband, in doing so in a cold-hearted fashion whereby she cheats, then goes back to behaving as if nothing had happened, does provide us with a number of indicators that support that this individual may well be a narcissist. During the COVID pandemic, Marina started sharing an insight into her life with her stepson lover, sharing images of their first daughter, Olga, who was later joined by their second child. On the Instagram account, she refers to her hubby as the most charming blue eyes in the world, flattery, assertion of control, but also plays the parent part, scolding him for being clumsy while pushing their daughter's pram, devaluing behaviour, or because he can't seem to hold down a well-paid job. The couple live in Krasnodar, which is close to Ukraine. She's also transparent about how she supports the family with the money she gets from social media, rather than letting him do an office job. Boast, belittlement. After revealing her relationship with her former stepson, she said, "So many people tell me to use makeup, make lashes and curl my pubic hair because of my young husband. But there is one thing. He fell in love with me with all my scars from plastic surgeries, cellulite, excessive skin and personality. And I do not want to seem better than what I am." False humility. She also told how she had insisted on a prenup so that she keeps all her money and assets in case of divorce from her new husband. Sense of entitlement. Here you have a clear example of an individual who doesn't recognise boundaries. She sees it as fair game to seduce her stepson. She sees it as fair game to do so under the nose of her husband. She sees it as fair game to carry on a prolonged affair. She also sees nothing wrong with telling the world all about what she's done, effectively boasting about it through social media. Plenty of narcissistic indicators in relation to this woman, and a clear case of somebody who does not recognise boundaries. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.